I lied a little bit on on the DrupalCamp website. It says intro to Git and Features. Yes, we'll get that. But it's really all about building a reliable workflow. Git and Features are integral and indispensable parts of that. But that's what it's all about. I mean, who cares about Git and Features? They're tools to get our jobs done. My name's Dan Reinders. That's my title. I'm Sparty Dan on Drupal.org. I'm not, yeah, anyway. Hopefully that's a good joke. I do expect questions, and I really want questions. I don't have enough content to fill the whole time, so your questions are going to be essential. I work at Commercial Progression. You see a lot of us with black shirts around. We're in Northville. We are around here. Every one of us is willing and happy to answer any questions you have, anything you want to talk to us about. They made me wear black today. That's not normal. What they'll tell you is they don't see me in the office without some logo wear. And just out of respect, I mean, I know we're here at Henry Ford College, so I won't wear the shirt, but I will get that up there right now. Any developer wants to have, any developer has a workflow. Now the question is it logical or not? How good of a workflow is it? In Drupal, there are some difficulties with it because it's hard to move content. And a lot of our configuration is actually content rather than in Drupal 8 when it's going to be moved into the config. I'm giving Shane a workout. That's why I'm moving back and forth. He has to move the camera. Our general thought is we want to move code up and data down. We always start out with a local dev. In the middle, you can have, we always have a staging server so that our clients can see our work. Oftentimes, if we're on different hardware, if the client has specific hardware they're going to use it on, we'll put a QA in there. So we'll actually have 4 steps. And then, of course, production so people can see it. The difficulty with Drupal is a lot of things are done in the UI. And so content types, views, image styles, you're all going to put those together in the UI because it's easy. That's what it's made for. But it's stored in the database and it doesn't fit the workflow. You don't want to move the database up. And there isn't a good way in Drupal of breaking the database apart and only moving parts of it up, at least not that I've found. So we move config into code using features. I'll make it so I don't have to crane my neck every time. Who has used features in here? Who knows what it is? Excellent. This is perfect. You guys get out? No, you can help me. From your experiences, when I say something that's weird, speak up and say, hey, Dan, you're wrong. My fellow developers at Commercial Progression are very used to that. I'm wrong a lot. This is the user interface on features. And you can see, well, you can kind of see, sorry about this graphic, but here's content types. And I'll focus on that for a second. Everybody has content types in their Drupal sites. How do you move those up? Features takes them out. You can expand that, pull down features. Down here you have views. In here you have image styles. You name, features basically creates a module, which looks like this. If you're familiar, you've looked through different modules. This is the structure of the module. Every module has to have an info file and a module file. This is the info file that features creates. This is a particular view that it's exported into code. Okay, pretty basic stuff, pretty reliable. Features, you'll hear some people talk about times when features is unreliable, how they get conflicts, how they get problems with features. Okay, there are some areas where features doesn't do well. I can't expand on those because everything I use it for, it works on great. I really would encourage you not to listen to people who say, oh, don't use features for this or don't use features for that. Try it out, see if it works. If it works, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. If it doesn't work, don't use it, okay? And we'll get into how you can not use it a little bit later, but it is a massively helpful module. And that's simply what it is a single module you download from Drupal.org. I will say there is a module that I always use with features that becomes very important to me, and that's the diff module. And I'll get into that, why that is in a second. Okay, so you have views. In this particular instance, we have a view in the code, and you can't read that, so I expanded it up here, and you can see it's in code. Okay, that's great. What if I want to change that? Okay, when you change it, you go and you have database overriding code. Oh crap, now my feature is not in code anymore. I'm in the database. I wanted to get it out of code, or out of the database into code, so I can migrate it up my chain, my development chain. Okay, no big deal. When we go into the features UI, this is under, I believe, manage. Should have put, you can see, unfortunately, I put it in a white font down here. It's the address for all of these. It's the paths for everything, so it really is there. So you'll see when you go to the manage, you'll have our feature, which somewhat, I shouldn't have named a feature featured, but yeah, I'm a developer, I have a problem. You can see here that it's overridden. If it's not, there's two options here that I know. There could be more, but it'll either say default or overridden. If it says overridden, then the database is overriding your feature somehow. And there's this is the part you can click into for viewing it, and you can review overrides. Here, this actually says overridden, and that actually is in a white font. If you click on that, you'll be able to see actually what your difference is in code, which I'm a geek, we're among friends here, and we love, at least, yeah, I love code. I can understand it much better than most things. The big deal about that is when you release this into the wild, somebody's going to go in and screw with your views. And you're not going to, picking through the UI to be able to figure out what somebody changed in your view. Have you done that? You've been able to find it instantly, right? Or have you searched for it for 3 hours and still can't figure out how they screwed it up? Diff, features, diff. I just figured it out. And the beauty is, well, let's see. I don't have that on here, do I? Dingbat. Down here, I think it's down here on this page. You can't see it because there's a revert. You can revert if somebody goes in and changes your view and it's overridden. You have the ability to revert it. So you can just wipe out their changes. Normally I wouldn't do that because I really want to know what their changes are. And what I would do then is I'd recreate the feature. Okay, so again, this is the features UI. You can see expanded now. Under content types, it's a featured photo. The dependencies, okay, what modules does my feature depend on? What do I absolutely have to have? Field bases, field instances. Features actually, which was nice, I just went in and clicked on featured photo. It picked out dependencies. It picked out field bases and field instances for me. I think it even picked out the image style that I needed. It didn't know the particular view, so I had to add the view down here. But that was all. Features has gotten to where it's pretty slick. It's pretty easy to use. And so I have name, a package. So on your modules list, This will show up as a group, as in one of your groups. On this, you can't read it very well. It's MAS. I like grouping my features so that I can find them in one place on my modules list, and it's not just in other. I find that good. Wow, that was really, you guys need to ask get some hands up. Dan, you're an idiot. Version numbers. I use them. I'm not always good about using them. It's nice to be able to have a version number just to know what you have on your different environments. Under advanced options, you can get it to generate the feature right in your site. So on your dev site, it's real nice. There's also drush commands that you can do this. And I don't remember, I wish Brad was here, one of my coworkers. He always uses drush. I always use features from the UI. But again, it's a drush update features, and it'll crank out all your features for you. You can also download the feature. So if somebody, let's say on your production site, somebody goes in and messes with a view, even though they're supposed to do that on dev, they're supposed to commit it to code, they're supposed to push it up, and that always happens. Yeah, okay, no. They go in, they screw with it on production, you say, oh crap, how am I going to do this? Because who knows what is it called? A deploy key. Who's heard of deploy key? Great. I am speaking a different language now, and I'm happy about that. So when you're on you have your local, you have your staging, and you have your production site. And we'll get in this a little bit more, well, we'll get into a lot more with Git in a second. But we don't want people changing code on this, directly changing code on production or on staging. So we'll use a remote repository. And you've heard of GitHub, Bitbucket. Those are remote. Some of the things they do is act as a remote repository. So on my local machine, when I have a Git repository set up, I'll commit my code, and then I'll push it to the remote repository. Now, that has users, so I can control who can use it. I can also set it up as public. But if I set it up with users and it's a private repository, you have to be an approved user to get to it. Well, GitHub, Bitbucket, they limit how many users you can have on a free account. Who's in favor of free? Yeah, okay, good. You're still listening? We particularly like free. So what happens is you can't have you can't have unlimited users. So on your production and your staging, you use what's called a deploy key. And that's what Git uses to communicate with your remote repository and get clearance to be able to download the code on a private repository. Now, again, I'm going to be going through, throwing out a lot of stuff here. After this, during the session, after the session, anytime today, anytime afterwards, you can contact me, ask me questions. I'm more than happy to hear myself talk. And if I'm talking to other people, I'm less likely to get committed. Now, that's a different committed than what we're talking about here. Okay. That's a very basic intro to features. And again, I don't have enough content today, so you're going to have to ask questions at some point, and that's how we'll all learn. Now, how do you deal with code changes? That's right. I had my laptop there, so I didn't have to go, ugh. Okay. Who's done this? Okay, you're bad people. Who hasn't done this? Liars. No, not really. You just you. Oh, okay, okay. Well, this is how at one point in my life, before I had converted to Git and seen the light and all that, this is how I figured out, okay, I had to make a change in this file. And I didn't want to just overwrite it. because in case I want to go back and I screwed something up, I wanted to know, okay, I'll save it as old. The index.html is what I'm looking at, and hopefully I didn't screw that up, but if I did, I can always go back and use this html.old, or I can use on Halloween. I didn't realize I put that as the date, but on Halloween, it was kind of scary, so it was kind of scary, yeah. So I just, that. Well, okay, great. Why is that bad? Okay, so anybody who's my age and older knows why that's bad. I can't remember it. I have no idea. Yes, but who's looked at at code that has 4 different of these that you've now inherited that, right, okay, you don't actually ever go back and delete them. You should. Okay, now, okay, that's just individual files we're talking about there. Now features. Features are modules. And features can have who knows how many files. They have to have at least 2. Actually, with features, they have to have 3 because everything's included as an include file. You look in that module file that features puts out, and it just says include this file. How do we move? Okay, so how do we keep track of features? On which feature are we using on prod, stage, dev? How do we move code from one environment to the next? Okay, we need some way of doing this, and we'll talk about, you'll hear people talk about version control, versioning, source control, source code control, revisioning, revision control code, I don't even know. Okay, we're gonna make it simple. It's a VCS. Now, we can talk about different VCSs. You can talk about CVS, subversion, mercurial. This is what we're using. Okay. It's also what's used on Drupal.org. Git. Why Git? What is Git? Git is a distributed version control system. Huh? Okay, if you look back at some of the older version controls, there was a server setting somewhere that whenever you wanted to make a change, you had to connect to that server, you had to check out the code, you had all sorts of people trying to shoot you for wanting to check out the code and make changes to their code, because if you screwed it up, it was on them and they had to be in charge of committing things. The nice thing about Git is I can check out, okay? Constance can check out, Shane could check out code. We can all do whatever we want with that code and then push our branches. And again, I'll hit on branches and some of the more vernacular in a little bit. But we can all push our stuff wherever we want. Okay, if Shane makes a change that he thinks is great, he can send it right to me. I can merge it into my stuff right away. I don't have to go back to a central repository and have it pulled in by somebody. I can, like in GitHub, you send code back to somebody as a pull request, and they can pull it into their repository. But it doesn't have to be like that. Okay, so I already kind of hit that, and again, it's better because I said so. How do you get started? Okay, I'm going to assume that you have Git on whatever machine you want. I see the 20, excellent. You didn't have to wave it around. Okay. I'm going to assume that. If you have a Mac, it's pretty easy. You can find a downloadable pretty easily. I mean, I did it, so how hard can it be? If you use Windows, well, okay, so the other one is Linux. Linux is really easy. apt-get, I think is get. apt-get, get, and done. Okay. If you use Windows, the door's right there. Okay, you have two options if you use Windows: buy a Mac or convert it to Linux. Not really. There are options for Windows. I don't use Windows. I did a long time ago. I knew how to do everything. And then when I got more and more in developing, I just couldn't do it anymore. It just isn't as easy. The Mac is really stupid simple, and I'm stupid, so I like it simple. Oh, well, let's go back to, you downloaded it. What do you do? Okay, well, initialize it. So you have a directory. You could have code in that directory, or you could not have started your project yet. Great, go to that directory and do a simple git init. And what it'll do is it'll initialize a repository. I don't know what that means. All I know that it means is that it puts a little .git directory in. And if you try to look at it in Finder, you can't see it because Finder doesn't let you see things. So you go into the terminal and you can see all in the terminal, and that's where I live. Basically what Git does is it makes copies of your code and does diffs and all sorts of things, and it stores it. And if you want to geek out, we can geek out later, but the big thing is it remembers everything, and you'll love it. You'll absolutely love it. If you haven't used it, if you're a little scared, I was a little scared, I was fearful because I'm like, oh man, I mean, these are really heavy duty developers that I see using this, and I'm not sure I know how to use it. I don't know. Number one, it's pretty easy. Number two, if you screw it up, you can always fix it with Git. That's the beauty of it. If you commit something and you figured out that you screwed it up and you put the branch in the wrong spot, or you did this, very easy. Go to Stack Overflow, search on it. There will be 15 people telling you how to do it. A couple of them will be pretty good answers, and you can go through and you can do it. Git doesn't forget things unless you explicitly tell it, okay, delete the branch and wipe out everything about it. So, after we initialize, okay, when you initialize, it sets up one branch, and it calls it master. And it typically, when you set up a remote, it'll call it origin. You'll see that a lot. Those are just default names. Those can be changed. On a lot of mine for my remotes, they're called, I change it. And I say, I don't like origin. I don't know what that is. I know what Bitbucket is. Okay, so I name my remote Bitbucket. So then I can push to Bitbucket, and it's wonderful. You can see there's nothing to commit here because we don't have anything in there. If you already had some code in, when you initialized and did a status, it would look more something like this. Okay, now I have a whopping huge web project that's really hard to keep track of. It's got one file. And here's the important stuff, or here's something that was hard for me to understand, I guess. There are a couple of stages how you can have files with Git. In this instance, you'll see untracked. Okay, Git knows what files it knows about, and it looks at the directories and says, I don't know about that file. It is untracked. Great. In this particular instance, because how I have it set up, it color codes, so that's supposedly red. I don't see red real well. I'm a Spartan, and I have a green pointer. Okay, is that fairly, we got that pretty well? Now, you need to add files to your repository, and that's a couple of step process. It can be a one-step process, but shh, don't tell anybody. We'll do that in intermediate Git. So here I'm adding git, add, and specifically I say one file. It now says git changes to be committed, and it has a new file, And here it says something about unstage. So when we add a file to Git using the add command, it stages it. That's a term they picked, okay? Basically, all that means is when you do your next commit, this file is going to be committed in that commit, okay? You have 3 levels. You have untracked files, you have tracked but not staged, and you have staged. The staged files are the ones that will be committed. The unstaged files, the tracked files, you can I shouldn't use that term. You can pick what ones you want to add to the stage. So let's say I've gone through and I'm a little bit slow on my commits today. So I've made a lot of different changes in different places in my site. I really like commits to be small because it helps me understand what I did on those small changes. But now let's say I've updated a couple of features, I have a custom module that I made a couple of changes to, and I updated jQuery update. Those are 4 separate things that if I say git add dot, it'll add all of those to my stage, and when I commit it, it'll commit all of that stuff. And if I figure out that I didn't want one of those, I'm going to have to go in and change and make a new commit and do it all over again to revert that. But if I stage files very, I don't know what word I'm looking for. If I stage only the relevant files, so that custom module I changed, I staged that first. And in my commit message, I say, commit this, and I made this minor update to the module. And then I take the feature I changed, and I stage that. I commit that. Take the other feature, stage that, commit that. Take whatever other changes, stage those, commit those. You now have 4 commits, and you can pull those out, and we won't get into how, but you can pull those out. You look it up on Stack Overflow, and it tells you how to pull a certain commit out so it never happened. Let's see. So git add dot, when you first initialize, you're probably going to use that because you want to edit everything to your repository. And that just says whatever's in the current directory and everything under that directory, add it. Git add u is something I didn't know about for a while, and now I just love it because what that says is git, I want you to add everything, all my files that have been changed that I'm already tracking, that have already been committed to the repository. So if I have new files, git add u won't pick them up. It's very useful. Git add, and then you just have a path. It'll grab that path and commit everything, or add everything under that path. Okay, now we get to, let's go back here for a second. Okay, so changes to be committed. Now we're going to commit the changes. This is a simple 1-line commit. There are multiple ways to commit. You can, if you don't give the little M flag and put a message in there, it'll actually dump you into your favorite editor to be able to enter the commit message in. In this case, just git commit added index.html. Here you'll see it's on the master. Okay, it added index.html. It said 1 file changed, 0 insertions, 0 deletions. On that, it's an empty file. That's why there's no insertions, no deletions. Most of the time what you'll see is 55 insertions, 42 deletions because you're changing code. And it deletes a line and inserts a line. So then if I look at the status, after I did my commit, I'm still on branch master. I have nothing to commit. The working directory is clean. Now this git lg is an alias I have set up. That's something that's very helpful with Git. Just like in a bash shell, you can set up aliases for commands. With Git, you can do the same thing. You can set up aliases for commands. This lg is a log function, and I just have it set up so it gives me what branch, it gives me the commit, what is that, the commit hash, I think it is. Tells me what was added with that commit, what time it was, and who committed it. So I guess I should go into the, and well, I'll show you that also in a little bit. That commit, can somebody verify that I'm not saying the wrong thing? That is a hash, isn't it? Yeah, and right, it's that is generally unique, but that is a truncated part of your hash. And you can use that to switch back and forth, but we'll also get into that in a minute. Yeah, that covers the basics. You're going to have your everyday Git commands. I think this pretty much covers them. I'm weird. I use rebase a lot. You probably won't. I'm just not. Git clone. Does anybody know what git clone does? Go ahead.
It brings down a copy of the image?
Yeah. So if you have a repository somewhere and you know, you want to have that on your machine, in this instance, like Drupal, right? You go to your Drupal.org, project Drupal, and up at the top, it'll have version control. Well, you click on that, and it'll show you a git command to be able to clone that code onto your machine. So it's git clone and then a website or a web address. So you're generally going to either use clone or commit to start a project. Clone if you're using somebody else's code, init if you're using your own. Add, I think we covered that. Remove, pretty self-explanatory. Commit. Now, checkout and branch. Let me see if I have this. This doesn't show exactly, but the thing to pay attention to on here is these lines over here. Each one of those lines is a different branch, and it can be tagged. So what I'll do for a branch, yeah, I guess I can leave it there. I have my master branch. I don't want to do all my work on the master branch because it just doesn't make sense. So whenever I want to, that's what goes to production, that's what is live, that is what I always want to be perfect. I always want the master branch to work. And you can make tags along there. So you can name different commits. You can name them version 1.0, version 1.2. And that way people can grab the code at that particular point in time and know that that's version 1.0 and it works. Okay, so let's say I have version 1.0 out there in the wild, somebody finds a bug, tells me about a bug. And whether I have a bug tracking system on Drupal.org, you do, right? You have, well, you have node numbers for issues. And if you look on, if you pull down if you clone Drupal and you pull down and look at the log for Drupal, each one of those commits is tagged with an issue number. So you know, why did we do this? And if you want to know details about that, you can go and look at the issue number. Okay? Well, let's say I have this bug and I have an issue and it's issue 13. It's my lucky issue. I'm going to name a branch. I'm going to make a branch that deals with just that bug. So I'm going to be on my master branch. I'm going to say git. Let's see. You can do it a couple of ways, but I'll do git checkout -b issue 13. So what it's telling me, or what I'm telling it is, I want it to check out the branch issue 13. The -b flag is I want it to create the branch. Okay, so when I first look at it, I could go through and I could create the branch manually, but I'm lazy. I'm just going to go git checkout -b issue 13. Now, then you'll see, then you can work on that code, on that branch. You make a commit. Let's do a little bit flying by. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully you can see this fairly well. So head is whatever code you're working on right now. That's where head's going to be. Okay. Origin is a remote repository. Prod is a branch on that remote repository. Again, origin head is at this point, and prod is my local branch. You can see down here, we had some things we were working on and it just never went anywhere, so that's an abandoned branch and we just don't do anything with it now. But this branch was ddev. I modified a little styling on the squeeze page form. You're welcome, Shane. And that's showing that branch. First we split it off there, we did some more commits, then we merged it back in. Does that make sense to me? Does it make sense to you? Is it sort of clear that if you go back to here, you had my little branch that just looked like this, but you have other branches that could go on for a long time because they're larger issues, there are larger things that you're trying to add to your site. Let's look at, go back here. You can see this is a commit history. It shows everything that we've done on this site, everything that we've added into it. In this case, it's pretty linear. We haven't broken out a lot of branches. And you can do, that's fine for a small site. There's a couple of different types of merges you can do. And I guess I gotta go back to this. So we have our branch we've created. It's all ready to go. We've had somebody look at it and test it to see that it's working the way we want it to. But of course, it's diverged from the master branch. Okay? Do we want to just go to production and have it, oh, just use this new branch? You can. That's not a real sustainable way of doing it. You want to merge that branch back into master because you could have multiple branches and you want to merge them back in to have that one place that you know is production ready. So what we would do is we'd go to that branch. Well, we'd go back to the master branch. We'd say git merge item 13. That merges that branch into master. Now master is up to date with that bug fix. You can push it up to Bitbucket or GitHub. You can pull it down onto your production machine, clear your caches, you're good to go. Okay? There are a couple of things with merging that you have to be careful of, and One thing is if you pull that branch back in and you do what's called a fast forward merge, all it does is play those changes right on your master branch, and you lose the fact that that was a separate branch. So in your graph, which is what was on the next, on there. So that's a graph visually showing you how things interact. If you do a fast forward merge, you lose that. If you turn off the fast forward merge, then you can keep that information, which can be helpful at times. One last thing. So let's say you've on your development environment, we fixed item 13, merged it back in, then we pushed it to Bitbucket. Now you're on your production machine, and you're always nervous about your production machine because if you screw things up, you got to fix them in a hurry. Okay? I always like screwing up little pieces rather than big pieces. So what I will always do on my production machine is I'll be there, I'll be on the master branch on the production machine, and I know I have to pull in changes. But I'm nervous. I'm always nervous. So instead of saying pull all the changes into my master branch, I'm ready to go. I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to say, no, I don't want you to pull in and merge everything right away. And that's what a pull does, is it merges things into your branch. What I'm going to say first is I'm going to say fetch the master branch from Bitbucket. Then I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, show me the log. And I'm going to look at a log like this, and I'm going to see that it has the changes I want it to have. And I'm like, okay, I'm confident that if I screw this up, it's going to be a small screw up. So then I will say get merge. Or no, I'll get pull, excuse me. I'll get pull the information in, and then it brings it to my master branch, and I'm all happy because everything's running and the customer doesn't see me screw up. I don't like customers seeing me screw up. So pull, push, fetch, merge, all really kind of go together. You push your code up, you pull it down, and you fetch. Fetch is a less aggressive form of pull. And Tori says I don't have any more time. I hope that gets you comfortable. It really is, I mountain bike, I have for years. When I first got my clipless pedals, it changed my world, absolutely changed my world. Going from either just feet or clips and straps going to clipless pedals, I was thinking that was the world. Gets better than that. It will, because if you get, let's say you're up here somewhere on your code and you say, oh crap, you can go here by saying get checkout that. It changes your files. If you're in an IDE, your IDE will pick up those file changes and you'll be coding right from there. You don't even have to think, you don't have to worry about it. It's pretty amazing. And it really is the foundation of a good workflow. If you have it in Git, you can always recover. You can always see the changes. You can always fix what your customer broke. Okay, so I need questions now, otherwise I feel, yes?
When you do Git, do you have the whole website be your project, or are there times where you are making a module, you do that as its own project? Are there best practices there? Or?
I have a real quick answer on that. Yes. It depends. So I guess I have a longer answer. It depends on what your project is. I have some customers where I'm just doing a little bit of changes on their website and it's all in one custom module. And they don't have Git initialized on their site. And so this is the only repository, and they don't have a remote. So yeah, in that case, I'll just do a repository just for that one module. In most of the times, I like having everything in version control. So if we're doing more work, I'll pull and they don't have Git, I'll tarball it, I'll bring it down, I'll initialize it, I'll commit everything. Now, I do have a Git, what is it? Config global, or git ignore global, a global git ignore file. And you'll see this on when you clone Drupal, or actually when you just download it, you'll see in there's of course the .htaccess file, there's also a .git ignore file. What it tells Git to ignore is the site's default files directory, because you really don't want to commit your images and other user uploadable content. It also keeps you from committing your settings file. And there's probably a couple of others in there. So it will automatically do that. We have, in our company global ignore file, we have a .info file, or a .info is ignored. And, right? Is it .info? Whatever PHP Storm sets up to be able to track project settings, we have that ignored. Whatever NetBeans sets up for projects, we have that ignored. So I don't know that there's a right answer for your question. I know what works for us, and that's kind of what we go on. Anybody else? Yeah.
For like newbies in the room, what's the Git, Bitbucket, GitHub relationship layout? You're working internal. I don't understand where like those services come from.
Sure. So Git is the program, and you could use Git and never use Bitbucket or GitHub or whatever Atlassian. Oh, Atlassian is Bitbucket. So you can just do it on Git. You can share files with people on Git. You can set up your own Git repository on a remote server, and you can just have Git communicate with that remote repository on your own hardware. All Bitbucket is and GitHub, they're just services that allow you to have remote repos that other people can see and use. That's all it is. And Bitbucket and GitHub are interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. You can actually migrate back and forth if you want to. GitHub was, I think, probably more popular. A lot of projects are on GitHub. If your project is open source, you can put it on GitHub for free, which I think you can also do with Bitbucket. But Bitbucket, it's just what commercial progression uses. Now, 2 questions. Oh, 3, good. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have multiple features that you're working on a website for,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a branch for each feature and then push that feature out to merge your master? Or like, I know you have a very large team and you have multiple people working on different features, so how do you manage that?
Right. And so did everybody hear the question? The question is, if you have multiple features that you're working on, do you keep those in separate branches? How do you manage those multiple features? The way I normally do it is I work on kind of with the idea towards functionality on the website. If all those features are dealing with the same functionality, I'll keep them in the same branch, because you can't run multiple branches at the same time. So if those features are related, I want to be able to run all the features at the same time, so they need to be in one branch. However, the changes to each of those features, I will commit in separate commits within that branch. So I'll change one feature at a time. Is that the end of the session? Okay. So please feel free to stop me, talk to me, whatever. Anybody, actually probably anybody here. Drupal camps are renowned for their friendliness. So you can stop anybody in a commercial progression shirt, ask them questions, anybody else. And we're all here learning. So that's great. Thank you very much.